Welcome to this podcast series on Turkish grammar. If you are learning Turkish, you have probably seen many lists of rules, A1 rules, A2 rules, maybe even rules you didn't ask for. This series is not about listing those rules. Instead, we'll look at what makes Turkish, Turkish. Parts that non-native speakers often find interesting, confusing, and difficult to explain, even when they know the rules. We will focus less on rules and more on meaning, function, and how Turkish actually works. Why Turkish makes you wait? Hello and welcome. In this short episode, I want to talk about something many learners notice very early when they start learning Turkish, sometimes without being able to put it into words. Turkish makes you wait. You listen to a sentence or you read one and you feel that the most important part comes very late. If you have had that feeling, you are not imagining it. And this is not something only non-native speakers experience. Even native speakers of Turkish sometimes feel the same needs, especially when reading long or complex sentences. Let's look at why this happens. One of the key features of Turkish sentence structure is this. Turkish usually follows a subject-object-verb order. This means that the verb, the action, the core of the sentence, comes at the end. Many learners find this challenging, especially those whose first language belongs to the Indo-European family, where the verb usually appears much earlier in the sentence. However, Turkish is not alone. There are other languages with a very similar structure, for example, Korean and Japanese. So this way of building sentences is not strange in itself. It's simply unfamiliar to many learners. Let's look at a very simple example. In Turkish, you might hear Ali bugün kitabı okudu. In English, we will say Ali read the book today. Now listen carefully to where the verb appears. In English, Ali read the book today. The verb read comes early. You hear the action almost immediately. But in Turkish, Ali bugün kitabı okudu. The verb okudu comes last. You hear who, Ali, when, bugün, and what, kitabı. And only at the very end do you hear what actually happens. Okudu. This structure has a clear effect on listening and reading. Very often, Turkish asks you to wait. And again, this is not only true for learners. Even native speakers experience this, especially in writing. Let's look at a slightly longer sentence, still using very simple Turkish. Ali, bugün, okulda, arkadaşlarıyla bir film izledi. As you move through this sentence, you understand each part as it comes. You hear who, Ali, when, bugün, where, okulda, with whom, arkadaşlarıyla, what, bir film. But the full meaning becomes clear only when you reach the verb, izledi. And that's the moment when everything connects. And sometimes even native speakers feel a small urge to go back and reread the sentence, not because it was unclear, but because now they finally know how all the parts fit together. Because of this structure, very long sentences in Turkish can be risky, both in writing and in speech. If too many details appear before the verb, the listener or reader may lose track of how everything connects. That's why in everyday language, speakers usually try not to delay the verb too much. And yet, there is an interesting exception. Some very skilled writers manage to build long sentences that you can read in one go without losing your way and without feeling the need to go back. How they do this, I honestly don't know. I read those sentences and think this shouldn't work, but it does. But this kind of mastery is rare. So, here is a very useful idea to keep in mind when learning Turkish. In Turkish, meanings tends to gather at the ends. Understanding often begins not at the beginning of the sentence, but at its conclusion. So don't rush to understand too early. Let the sentence finish. Turkish rewards patience for learners and native speakers alike. Listen for this. Notice how you often have to wait until the very end of the sentence to hear the action. If you would like to explore these ideas more closely, I also offer Turkish lessons on italki. You can find the details in the episode description. In the next episode, we'll look at another feature of Turkish that also works from the ends, this time not in meaning, but in sound. Thanks for listening.